Okay, today is July 12th, 2025. We've had some technical difficulties getting this started, and if you hear an echo, I apologize, but we've done our best to get rid of it. It is block height 905,239, and today I am joined by my friend Sean, who I'm looking forward to speaking with. How are you doing, Sean, with new all-time highs here? I assume pretty good.
Yeah. Feels all the same. Just another time talking to Connor, and a different price and a different block height.
It does feel like it's been a mellow cycle so far. Like we haven't seen like 2017 mania. It's just been like progressively higher and higher and higher, and it seems like it's a lot of institutional bidding rather than retail FOMO.
Yeah, everybody keeps throwing that term around, institutional bidding. I honestly don't have a reasoning for what's happening, but it does feel like less mania for sure. It's barely on the news. There's none of the normal normies are talking about it. Like I feel like the last that 2017 mania hype, everybody talked about it. Like your school teachers mentioned it. Like everybody was like, "Whoa, look at this Bitcoin thing," but it still just feels like it's chilling in the shadows
Yeah.
at the moment.
So I know you just went to El Salvador, and I would love to hear what you thought of kind of the boots on the ground there. And I asked this question because I think in the states, we still have payment rails that work: Apple Pay, Venmo, Cash App. It's so seamless. Makes it very easy to use dollars as a medium of exchange, and since dollars lose value over time, I think people would obviously prefer to spend in the bad money, save in the good. But for people in countries where, I mean, I guess El Salvador is dollarized, so it's not a perfect example. But for countries that don't have the same payment rails we do, how does how what was it like boots on the ground?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it was interesting. I Part of me felt in some way, this might sound a little bad, but it felt a little forced in El Salvador. There were obviously some people who like were passionate about it and definitely were more than happy to advertise and accept it. But then there was a lot of other people that were like, no, I don't really want your Bitcoin. And I think part of this, from what I've gathered, has felt like uh, when Bukele rolled that out in El Salvador for the first time. I don't remember exactly what the price was, but I heard a couple stories that shortly thereafter there was it cut in half or something. There was a decent price crash right after everybody kind of got onboarded and introduced to Bitcoin. So I think that first introduction to it for a lot of people was just like, oh, what is this scam? But it's been a long time since then, so it's yeah, so it's like recovered, and I think where it sits there, honestly, for me was in between card and cash. Like El Salvador, everybody wants cash, and if you didn't have cash and you offered them your credit card or your Bitcoin, they'd always say Bitcoin, and it's just because credit cards have those fixed fees, and there's
Chargeback risk too.
uh yeah, and the vendor pays the fee, whereas with Lightning payments, the sender pays the fee. So people are more than happy to accept it in a lot of places. It was really cool, but it definitely didn't. I think it did lack some of just the organic grassroots feeling that you may have expected or would rather see. Um,
Hmm.
but yeah, but you're right. They are dollarized, so I think there's like less of a crazy need for people to use it. I mean, not that the dollar is a good savings account, but in terms of the grand scheme of things for the rest of the world, they probably feel better off than their neighbors.
Yeah, so let's see. According to CoinMarketCap's historical snapshot on September 7th, 2021, Bitcoin was trading at $46,811.13. So what did it say? September 7th, 2021. So if we go to the chart, we go to all time. Say September 7th, 2021. So at that point, yeah, Bitcoin was around there. And they watched it run up to 60K and then drop back down to 31 and then creep back up to 69. It hit around 69, I remember, for the second peak, and then it dropped all the way back down. So they had to live through all this, and now obviously they're up a lot. I think Bukele was just bull posting on Twitter about this. We go to Bukele's Twitter, Philosopher King. El Salvador hit El Salvador Strategic Bitcoin Reserve hit an all-time USD high today, $738,750,808. Yeah, that's pretty crazy. So that, it was a bumpy ride to the top, but they're up about $349 million for a small country, which is pretty good. But I could see how in those early days having to deal with that kind of volatility, and especially if you hadn't been looking into Bitcoin or you didn't know, that probably was brutal.
Yeah. And it's just such a new thing for everybody there. So I think it was just like a quick turn off when they came in at the beginning of like that, just the peak volatility of the cycle. And we're just sitting on a roller coaster and had no idea what was going on.
Yep. You made a point too about marketing, and I think that's a really good example because you look at something like Steak and Shake, and I've actually been going to Steak and Shake more often recently because they embrace Bitcoin, and I did pay with it one time. But to be honest, I would rather pay with dollars or the Gemini credit card and get Bitcoin back, just rather than like spend my Bitcoin. But at the same time, I do support. I love the idea of like circular economies. I was just up in Georgia and we went to a farmers market in Marietta near Atlanta, and there were two vendors accepting Bitcoin. So one of them I paid in Bitcoin simply because you just want to like get those circular economies going. But it does seem like we're in this kind of like transition phase where, especially people in the States, Bitcoin is going to be treated as a store of value mostly, and I think the medium of exchange part will come later when. Well, I don't know. I think Keynesians can kick the can down the road longer than most expect, but when inevitably something hits the fan, then Bitcoin will be used more and more as a medium of exchange out of necessity rather than because you got Bitcoiners like ourselves who just want to see circular economies.
Yeah, eventually Bitcoin will be the stable thing in the room.
It does kind of feel like it's starting to we're setting a price floor under 100K. I heard a stat the other day that Bitcoin was spent 40 days or something, a little over 40 days over 60K in 21 or 22 or whenever it was, and now we spent I think almost 2 months. Besides that quick little dip, we spent over 60 days at 100K. So I think it's starting to form a new floor, which is a really positive sign.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it feels like 100K is just normal now. This is just it's been sitting here for so long.
It does. In 24, it literally dipped under 40K for a second there, and that feels like a long time ago, even though that was actually very recent.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah, January was at 40, so we're half a year, just over half a year away.
Yeah, so I'm curious, what do you think of all these Treasury companies coming in? Obviously, there's some people on Twitter saying it's paper Bitcoin and that we should be way higher. I don't know if I subscribe to that. I think we should be grateful that, like I said earlier, there's an institutional bid, that there's large buyers in the space. But, I also love the cypherpunk ethos and actually trying to take out the store value component of fiat and take out the means of control function of fiat and bring back the store value function of money. But yeah, would love to hear your thoughts on it.
Yeah, the Treasury companies are so interesting. I saw something recently and it resonated. I thought it was kind of funny. People were referring them to as this cycle's shitcoining or altcoins. It's now Bitcoiners selling you their altcoin that'll outperform Bitcoin. We're gonna outperform Bitcoin this cycle, and it made me giggle. And I was like, "Fuck, that's really true. It is really true in a lot of ways." And I've seen a couple people speak about it, especially Bitcoin, like Jack Mallers and people like that. And I think they're all conscious of this, but their defense is, this is going to happen anyways. Wouldn't you rather Bitcoiners steering the ship at these places? And that is, that also resonates with me. I guess what I think about it overall is, it is a slight form of shitcoinery, just because the goal is to outperform Bitcoin in many of these cases, and they're leveraging financial products to do so, which people will be successful at. It's not just because they're trying to outperform Bitcoin, they'll fail. People will be successful at it, but there will be people who fail. This is one, uncharted territories, and two, kind of complicated. So it's not like every single Bitcoin treasury company is just going to be wildly successful. Some will fail, some will be great. Like it's just the natural order of things. But I do like I proceed with caution. I don't really touch equities anymore, so I haven't indulged. But I definitely love to spectate and speculate about what's going on. And honestly, like what Sailor's doing in strategy, the more I've read about it and heard like the guys at True North have some great research materials on it. They've been like distilling what's happening in such a unique way that I had not seen before, and it's like, wow, these are like novel financial products. Like they're actually treasuries have never the strategy has never been structured in this way. There has never been a way to like operate a treasury strategy. It's always just been every company's treasury strategy has always just been, you know, let's just give the cash back to the shareholders in terms of dividends, yeah, or buy back the stock. Like there was no way. It was like there was nothing to do with a treasury. You couldn't like really like have these treasury operations because it was just an uphill battle. The investors were always like, "Oh, we'll just put in the S&P; it'll outperform everything else, or anything else that you could do with the cash." So it is really interesting, and I think it's like the natural thing that's going to come from pristine capital. Like we have pristine capital now, so of course people are going to start creating treasury strategies on how to acquire more of it and how to leverage what they already have. So it just makes sense like this, but I think my stance is that it's uncharted territory, and there's always a chance people trip. So in some way, shape, or form, it is a little bit of shit cornery because there's more trust involved. But more power to you if you do it. I just I'd rather just hold Bitcoin for the meantime. People may outperform me, but my ego will be okay.
Yeah, it's hard to complain with Bitcoin's returns if you hold it long term. And what you said resonated, especially the part about how it's this cycle's, I don't know, shitcoin. We saw the ICO craze, the initial coin offering craze in 2017, the NFT cycle, if you will, in 2021, and now it's the treasury cycle. And it does seem like it has more legs just because the pristine collateral they're buying is actual Bitcoin. It's not JPEGs on someone else's servers. It's not vaporware. But it's funny because I think the guy's name is Scott Milker, and he had a tweet that was like, these treasury companies are pulling all the money that would have gone into altcoins. They're stealing. Like, I have to find the tweet. They literally said, like, they're stealing the money that would have gone into altcoins. I thought stealing was like a ridiculous verb to use there because it's just the free market deciding that, we don't want to put our money into vaporware grift tokens. We want to put it into treasury companies. But I think you're right that people should proceed with caution. And everyone out there who is like looking into these things even says, most of them are saying you should have 80% 1x Bitcoin, spot Bitcoin, and cold storage, or and your own custody or a custody setup you're comfortable with. And then if you want to go out there and it's amazing that strategy rebranded from MicroStrategy to strategy, because with this treasury strategy, how many times are we saying strategy over and over again?
Yeah,
that brand recognition for them is very well done. And the way I look at it, I have a little bit of MicroStrategy, and it's the only equity I have. And it's like 5% of like everything else is mostly just Bitcoin in some form or fashion. And I'm so curious. Someone said, I was at a Swan Salon in Atlanta, which is like a little happy hour thing Swan puts on, and someone said he looks at these treasury companies as like the .com bubble, and that really resonated with me, because if you look at the .com bubble, how many websites like Pets.com and the rest of them went out of business or nowhere to be found, don't exist anymore. But the few companies that did emerge from that, the Googles, the Apples, the Microsofts, the Amazons, all those companies have created trillions of dollars of value for shareholders. And I think we're going to see the same thing with these Bitcoin treasury companies. And, it is hard, like, when you see, like, the Metaplanets and even Strategy, like, from when they first went on the thing, the gains have obviously outperformed Bitcoin over the years. But at the same time, you don't get the freedom to be able to move your money however you want, to, all the freedoms that Bitcoin offers. You don't get that from a treasury company. But, I'm with you. I think people should proceed with caution, do their own research. And because it's such, like, a novel thing, there's just a lot of things that have to be worked out and figured out. How do you value these companies? Like you're at the True North guys do a really great job. and it's so new that I don't think many people understand how to model or evaluate a lot of these treasury companies. So it'll be very interesting to see how it shakes out.
Yeah, I love how they're pushing the envelope. Like the MNAV is like this wasn't a thing before in regular finance, but now they've kind of pioneered this, and I think that's just one small example of what's about to come over the next five years. Like as companies start adopting this, as banks are allowed to hold this now, create loans against it, just integrate it into the financial system more, it's going to old metrics and old ways of measuring and viewing and performance and risk and valuation they don't make sense. They don't make sense for Bitcoin. And like what's happening at Treasury and what True North has also done is the prime example of that. They're creating their own metrics. They're saying we're gonna focus on Bitcoin per share or like shareholder. Like they're literally just changing the metrics because they're like, you guys are measuring the world wrong. We have different ambitions, different goals, and different long-term perspective, and we're going to create the metrics to measure ourselves against those goals, not these arbitrary fiat metrics that are antiquated and
you know what's going to be interesting too, if this is like the dot-com bubble, and a lot of these, and I wish them success, I hope most of them do well, but say we do have like another dot-com bubble, Bitcoin goes to, let's say, $1 million, and then crashes down to 200K, and like in that volatility, most companies aren't like Strategy, haven't been through a bear market, just have to spit their coins out at the bottom. But then, they go through bankruptcy, and bankruptcy is not a fast process. So like you saw with the FTX thing, the people got rugged because they basically marked to market when FTX went under. But it was like one of the first cases of bankruptcy where everyone, again, they got rugged because if you had one Bitcoin and it got marked to market at like 20 grand and then it's 100 something grand, obviously, you lost 5 extra value. But USD wise, you did get your full amount back, technically speaking, because of the appreciation of the coins. So you wonder if there's like a bust cycle at some point with these treasury companies, and some of them have to declare bankruptcy. What it's going to look like in bankruptcy court when you're going through the proceedings, and then say a year later when the proceedings are finished, and like everyone is like has can be made more than whole. It's just going to be funny to watch that play out, because I don't think we've ever had. Like you, for example, the .com thing. Say you had pets.com as your domain, and I have no idea how that bankruptcy thing played out. But it's a lot harder to sell like a domain name, in bankruptcy court than it is to sell something like Bitcoin, which is a 24/7, 365 quite liquid market.
Yeah, and I mean to that point, there's no even guarantee that equity holders get paid out in bankruptcy. There's the capital stack. Debtors get paid out first, and now you see what MicroStrategy is doing with preferred shareholders and creating different tiers of where they fall in the capital stack. These are all claims on what the company owns. So you're right. I like what you said before. 80% should be cold storage, locked away Bitcoin at the very least. I mean, this is not financial advice, but for our perspective,
none of that financial advice.
Yeah. But like, if you are gonna gamble with 20%, you're speculating with fiat. Like, you're trying to get more fiat dollars. You can't like withdraw Bitcoin from your equity in a company that you have. Same with the ETFs. You can't withdraw Bitcoin from the ETF. It's just speculation. So I mean, you could trade options. You could go to throw your coins on blackjack. Or I can't tell you what to do with money, but it is like you are speculating because you don't own Bitcoin. You're just trading paper notes essentially. And I mean,
yeah,
you can make a lot of money doing it and then turn around and put it into Bitcoin, and more power to you. But it's just, I think it's important, like you just said, to like clarify what is going on and what you're doing, and make sure you understand what you're doing, so you're not buying somebody's shitcoin and thinking you're just gonna, or buying somebody's treasury shitcoin.
Yeah, it's like this just weird arbitrage too, because I think one of the reasons Metaplan has been so successful, obviously Dylan and Simon, they do an amazing job over there, and they deserve all of the success that they've generated for themselves. But there was also like this arbitrage where, I don't know Japanese tax law too well, but from my understanding, it's a very high tax rate if you just hold spot Bitcoin, whereas if you put like you buy Metaplanet, or especially if you have it in like their equivalent of a IRA, you can have it like almost tax-free or incredibly low taxes in certain accounts. So by buying the Metaplanet stock instead of Bitcoin, you get this like huge arbitrage where if you do cash out to take fiat gains, you have to pay way less taxes. And that arbitrage kind of exists too with strategy, and like you were just talking about, it's the stride, the strike, the strife. They created those instruments because there's all this money in the world that can't go out and invest in equities, or they can't buy underlying spot Bitcoin, but they can buy convertible debt. They can buy different instruments. So to your point, you're still playing their game, but it's like there's this huge arbitrage where even if someone else's equity is kind of a shitcoin because they can print an infinite amount. I mean, obviously there's a board and there's restrictions to how when and how you can create it. But equity is not necessarily scarce, and if you get board approval, you could always print more of it. And the thing that you can't print more of is Bitcoin. So it's just like this interesting arbitrage. And Russell Okung had a tweet recently that was saying, if you're praying for rate cuts, you're still playing the game. And I just thought that was pretty profound. It's like, if you're trading MicroStrategy, which I'm not trading, I'm just holding it. But like all these Bitcoin treasury companies, you are still playing the fiat game. And it's just like that's such a key point. You probably, if you pick one of like the Bitcoin treasury companies that's like Apple or Amazon or Meta that will go on to do well, yes, you'll probably outperform Bitcoin, but it is interesting. You're still kind of playing the fiat game because it's still part of that system. I don't think strategy is going to get Executive Order 6102, and I really hope not as a shareholder. But they still have like a lot of means to just do shady stuff. Yeah, that with Bitcoin, I mean, it's not perfect, but you secure your keys in a multi-sig. There's a lot of ways to basically protect yourself and have a lot more sovereignty versus a share of a stock in your brokerage account that is technically infinite in terms of how much of that equity can be printed.
That makes a lot of sense. I think the arbitrage is really true. I think what we're witnessing and what just makes sense is people who really understand Bitcoin and are viewing the world through this lens rather than the original lens we had been viewing and measuring and valuing the world through. There's an information asymmetry. So people who really understand Bitcoin see these areas for arbitrage. Like, there's a lot of capital stuck in these debt markets, in these equity markets that can't get exposure to Bitcoin. I know how to create a product to let that happen. I think the Tether guys are a good example too. Those guys are OG Bitcoiners. But what are they doing? They made this, buy Treasury stable coin thing. So more revenue, but they realized an arbitrage.
Arbitrage and fiat. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. So what really viewing and understanding the world through Bitcoin allows Bitcoiners to do in this decade and the next decade is spot all these areas for arbitrage as value is begging, or capital's begging to escape this controlled system into a free system. And they're going to find ways to make money off of it. And I honestly don't blame them. It's like, if you see it, if you're first, and if you don't do it, it's going to find a way to happen anyways. This is like a bunch of, I love the one analogy, I forget where Sailor gave it, but it's like a huge pool or lake up in the sky, and you're plugging a hole in the side of it. The water's going to fall out. It's the gravity. It's gravity. This is just the way things are going to move regardless. If you poke the hole in the lake, or somebody else does, or where you poke it, or how you poke it, with what stick. So there's so many different ways this can unfold, but somebody's going to make it happen, because it's just there's arbitrage everywhere to take advantage of over the next decade or two as capital flees a controlled system.
Isn't it really funny too how Tether is like a fully reserved bank, and Circle too? They're essentially they take in $1 and they back it fully with the Treasury. Which, if you look at our fractional reserve banking system, which if anyone gets the chance, go on libgen.rs and pirate the creature from Jekyll Island or In the Fed and throw that PD. I mean, I also bought the book from G. Edward Griffin. I just bought it, so I'm excited to read it. Not approving of pirating books, but theoretically, you can go on libgen.rs, take the PDF, and why you need the digital version is because you can throw it into Notebook LM, after you've of course bought it on Amazon, right? And you're reading it, and then you can ask it questions about the book. And one of the questions I asked it was like, how is new money created in the fiat system? And from my understanding, and obviously I understand like he has more of an Austrian bent and is not a fan of the Fed, but I always kind of thought like I put in money in the bank and then they can loan out my reserves or in other people's deposits. But the way it really works is like just the amount of deposits is more so like a ratio to how much they can lend. And I think they took it down to 0 during COVID, but typically it's around like 10% or something. And then say I walk in to get a mortgage and I need, let's say, $500,000. The bank then creates an asset on their books that says $500,000, Connor owes us, and they create a new $500,000 out of thin air. That is what they do. They create that new money out of thin air, and they give it to me. And now the bank has an asset, which is my liability of $500,000 that didn't exist before. The bank did not go out into the economy and provide a good or service or value to other people to earn that $500,000. They just have a license that says I can coin money, and they coin that money, and that's essentially how new money is created in the system. And it's ironic that like we have this like fractional reserve banking system, and because they've stopped innovating, because they have this amazing monopoly where they can print money out of thin air and charge us interest on said money, we have now the Tethers and the Circles and the stable coins, which have become fully reserve banks in a way, which I do think will make the fractional reserve system a little more unstable as like money drips out from that into the Tethers and the Circles and other stablecoin issuers. But it's just kind of ironic that like they're able to they essentially do fully reserve banking, and obviously your counterparty risk is tethered. But it's just amazing that like stablecoins have in essence brought back fully reserve banking, and like the Caitlin Longs of the world, shout out to her, Custodia Bank, literally got like blocked and stiff-armed by the Fed for trying to do the model, and then they said we're going to charge for your money, but we're not going to see, this is a weird thing. She, like, kind of the pitch, as I understood it, was we're not going to lend out your money. It's going to be like abatement, like when you go and get a valet and they take your car. They have no legal claim or title to your car. I think it's called abatement, where they can just like move it to the parking spot and back, but that's it. They have no legal claim or title to it, and that's what Caitlin Long was going to do with your money. And if you read the fine print of banks, it's like, it's just an IOU. It's like a casino chip, right? You deposit the money and you see the number and you can spend it, but it's more or less an IOU. And it's just kind of funny that stablecoins have kind of delivered on the fully reserved model simply because legacy banks just stopped innovating. And I guess there's a lot of demand for dollars too outside the U.S. for people who can't have checking accounts. But yeah, long-winded way of saying I think it's hilarious that stablecoins are bringing back fully reserved banking, and it's great scaffolding for hyper Bitcoinization.
Yeah, I mean, I think we talked about it maybe 2 years ago, but I don't think my opinion has changed. I think these are a bridge. They're an arbitrage in this intermediary time period. Just like many of these other things, like for instance, like by the time most people are living on a full Bitcoin standard, or most companies, just their treasury is Bitcoin, they're not going to be doing treasury operations because there's not going to be a lot of capital markets to siphon value out of. The arbitrage will have closed. The window of opportunity will close. So I think that's kind of the same things with the stable coins. Just another example of that. There's a window of opportunity right now for this arbitrage while both systems exist parallel, and people are finding ways to pull that capital across from one system to another. So I mean,
yeah, and the smart ones like Tether are literally taking it and putting it into Bitcoin. So
exactly,
and they're plowing it into the better thing. I was watching Swan Signal live, and Q had a point on it that and this is just research, and obviously like if he looked up the companies that have the largest dividends and saw how much Bitcoin would they have if they had just, instead of paying out those dividends, bought Bitcoin with it. So money that, as you were saying earlier, they either do the share buybacks or issue out the dividends. And man, the numbers were staggering. And again, obviously, there's a caveat. If Microsoft had been buying Bitcoin with their dividends, we probably would have seen a higher price. So it's not like a perfect thing. They definitely would have gotten less Bitcoin than these estimates show. But I forget the number. But like, if you just look at like dividends alone from like, say Microsoft started buying in 21, I think it'd be like over 1 million Bitcoin. Like it'd be a very large number of Bitcoin, which is, I mean, more Bitcoin than Strategy has. More Bitcoin, over 1 million is more Bitcoin than Satoshi has. So it's just funny to think that. If some of these CFOs wisen up and like you look at, I mean, I like Strategy, but it was like their business intelligence was dying. Saylor said it himself. Like if they hadn't gone on the Bitcoin standard, that's a company that's going to slowly die a slow death, right? But if you get a growth company, man, that is like growing quickly and they start transmuting that extra cash flow into Bitcoin, it's going to be especially like, you know, a Mag 7 type company. It's going to be very interesting to see. You know, like at that point, does everyone else just become a treasury company? Like if, you know, let's just say Meta, founder led, Mark Zuckerberg, you know, say whatever you want about him. I love the fact that he open source Llama is kind of going down the open source route for his AI. And I know he has a goat named Bitcoin. So say he just starts, you know, going on like a treasury strategy and his stock just starts ripping. You don't think Apple and Amazon and Google and, you know, Microsoft are going to look at that and be like, maybe we should do the same thing, because it's really that hard to. It'd be a pain. You got your shareholders as a public company to approve, but it does seem like, you know, at some point it becomes hard to ignore that like performance when one of those companies is doing so much better than the rest of them, and it seems like they would be like forced to follow suit, or else their shareholders would get pissed, and you know, just be like this recursive thing where shareholders get pissed, they dump the stock tanks, and it's just more and more pressure until they get on a Bitcoin treasury strategy.
Financial gunpowder. Saifedean said it best. Like, it's either it's just the narrative will be increasingly adopt or die. It's financial gunpowder. That's the best way to view it. I think it's the best analogy I've heard in so long. It sticks forever.
Yeah, it is a great analogy. I'm curious. Do you think you think AI would also be framed in like it's not financial gunpowder, but it seems like every company and their mother is trying to do an AI strategy now, and I love the tools, but you know, Saylor had a good point, I think, on the strategy conference this year, where he's like, every company and their mother is doing an AI strategy. So is it really, that's just, you know, it's like, his point was, you know, if everyone's doing it, it's not really that like much of a revolutionary idea or that much of an asymmetric bet. But it also, like, I don't know, to the gunpowder analogy, it does kind of seem like you adopt it or die, so every company's adopting it. And I think Bitcoin is the same thing for their money. It's just, you know, Bitcoin, I guess that's what makes it the asymmetric bet. It hasn't caught up. Every company realizes now we need to use AI, and they're all trying to figure out how to use AI, and it hasn't been as successful as some of this Bitcoin stuff. But the Bitcoin stuff also seems like it, you know, it's gunpowder and every company needs to adopt it, and it's just a lot earlier. But yeah, curious how you're thinking about AI, and especially how companies are adopting it.
Yeah, it does. It almost feels like .com part 2. Like, there's so many AI startups too that I've heard of, and like all these that are getting seed funding, and like not even. I saw one story about like this AI startup that was just a scam and stole seed funders' money essentially. But like, I mean, that's just
how
a
many
tongue in
too in
cheek.
YC they'll get funding, and then they'll buy from another YC company, and then that YC company,
Yeah.
not just put in YC. There's like many cases where like both companies will get funding, and then they'll become each other's customers, and they'll say, yeah, we had $1 million recurring revenue this year, and they're just buying from each other. You know, it's like a perpetual circle jerk essentially in the startup world.
Yeah, it is actually really funny. I mean, another information asymmetry for sure. But I think I do think in a sense that if you don't start to incorporate some of the AI tools into your business, then like your productivity will lag behind others, and it's just like that's going to be the case. Some companies are going to integrate it better than others. So I mean, I think there's just a lot of change in that sense, but also it seems so new in a lot of sense because the models keep getting like significantly better every couple months. So it's part of me is like, okay, people will be using them as they get better, but they will get to this point where there's kind of like a diminishing return on how good they're getting, and they're much more useful, maybe even more easy to use or just smarter in general. So I think at that point it'll be adopt or die. Right now it's like maybe you can get ahead of the curve by integrating some of these novel tools. But I've used them a lot, and especially like I've used it a lot for coding too. And sometimes what I've noticed is if you don't think ahead, like many steps ahead to try and create structural to drive it down the right path and think and avoid future problems, then it will take the easiest path and get you into a problem later on. This is just a personal anecdote.
They are, man. They're freaking lazy
So
sometimes.
yeah, they're lazy. So
annoying.
yeah, so it's like they're smart, but you really need to steer the ship, or else I feel as though you actually waste more time. And I saw a randomized control study recently about developers using AI models, and it said it actually decreased their productivity. And this is my hypothesis as to why that study showed the results it did. And it was because if you're lazy, it is also lazy, and you could just go in death loop circles, trying to fix a bug or going down a path that you shouldn't have gone down. You should have structurally taken a different path if you were thinking a couple steps ahead. So that's in that.
I gotta share this meme.
Exactly.
The guy said, for those listening, the meme is a picture of Rick Rubin with his headphones on. Like it became like the vibe coding meme. It was him at a music thing. But it says, okay, Grok, build a startup that can run 500 complex health tests from a single drop of blood, make no mistakes, and no fraud. It's like, it's another one, it's like the Giga Chad guy.
Yeah,
like,
no, but it's...
startup from scratch that, gets to $1 million ARR without me having to do any work. Don't make any mistakes, please and thank you. It's like, the prompting is so important because it's so easy to, like, outsource your thinking and... Yeah, like outsource your thinking to the model, and I've seen kind of the same thing with like writing. Like I constantly have to remind myself, like I'm feeling like itch, like just throw it in ChatGPT and have it fix it. And it's like, no, it's a great resource to be like a writing partner and an editor and a tool. But I need to write this first. I need to display my own thoughts. Yeah. And then just like when I put it into ChatGPT, ask it where can I improve it, how can I reword this, and like don't just rely on it to write my whatever I'm trying to write, but to actually improve and enhance it. You're so spot on that you have to be very cognizant and just how easy it is to like let your brain atrophy and just outsource the thinking to the model rather than thinking for yourself.
Yeah, maybe in the future, in a year or two, they'll get to the point where they're better at thinking. But yeah, right now, it still feels... It's so useful, don't get me wrong. Like, you have found infinite use cases for it. It's made my life extremely more productive, and I've, done things that I probably would have not been capable of doing before because of it. But I think that there is still so much room for it to grow, and I think at those points is when it's really going to be technological gunpowder. You need to be using this, or else you're severely falling behind. Right now, it's just like you're kind of falling behind. Or you might even move slower if you don't use it properly.
Yeah, no, I agree. It isn't. I think the gunpowder analogy works for AI and Bitcoin. It's just kind of funny that it's kind of hard to square the circle in the sense like, everyone and their mother wants an AI strategy and they're trying to build one, and it's really not working that great. And Bitcoin is working fantastic, and it's just kind of funny to see that. I'm slowing on podcasting. Sorry, my little one. Okay, we'll go ahead with Mama. I love you very much. I'll be on a little bit, okay? Thanks, little lady.
Little lady.
Lock to make sure. Shout out my 3D printed lock to make sure she doesn't pop back in here. Little so lady, funny. Little stacker. You got to be indoctrinating the kids early. Yeah. Back to the AI thing. One thing I wanted to say is I wanted to share this because I don't think a Bitcoin company would do this, and Hertz is definitely not a Bitcoin company from my understanding. But this is like the worst possible use case for AI. So it shows AI is making sure you pay that ding on your rental car. Hertz and other agencies are increasingly relying on scanners that use high-res imaging and AI to flag even tiny blemishes, and customers aren't happy. And then, Trung had a good write-up on it. But basically the point is a lot of Hertz customers are already putting its new AI scanning system on blast in Reddit and LinkedIn. So this guy, Adam Foley, I rented a car from Hertz over the weekend and encountered precisely this scenario about aggressive AI usage that will damage a brand that I've made posts about in the past. Upon picking up the car and exiting the faculty, high-powered cameras took a 360 picture of the car. Upon returning the car, a similar process took place. 2 hours later, I received a notification that damages were found, which highlighted the areas. One small ding on the roof, but possibly just dirt or anything else that could throw off a camera, and one similar artifact on the hood. Nothing any human would detect or reasonably consider damages. The automated message said that I owed $190, but if I paid it today, it would be only $125. The fee is literally the price of the entire 4-day rental minus $5. To protest this fee, it is an automated AI chat experience that does not break to go to human interaction no matter what choices you make. You are only given explanations for why you still owe 190. So Hertz' new policy, I guess, is as long as a car does not appear to be brand new and spotless to AI cameras, the customer is going to pay. Enjoy the one-time cash grab with customers. I will never rent a Hertz while this policy continues.
One-time cash grab.
But it's like there's that guy Rory Sutherland. He had a great thing, talking about how like you get the McKinsey analyst in a hotel, and they'll be like, "How can we cut costs? Let's get rid of the doorman." And the doorman serves all these vital functions. He gossips with the other doormen to make sure everything's good in the area. He keeps homeless people away from the hotel. He greets the customers. Like he has all these like things that you can't really measure with money, but are crucial to a nice hotel. And the McKinsey's like, "What's his salary? $60,000 a year. Get him gone. That's $60,000 saved. We'll put a little scanner at the top of the door for $1,000, and that'll do the job of the doorman, and it'll just open the doors automatically." And then they do that, and the hotel can't charge the same rates. It falls off. It goes from a 4-star hotel to a 2-star hotel because now there's homeless people outside. You don't get that personal greeting, and it's like the hotel has lost a ton of money because they can no longer charge the 4-star hotel rates. They have to charge the 2-star hotel rates. So it's like how many short-sighted decisions, it's like you said, a one-time cash grab. How many Hertz customers are never going to go back to Hertz because they have this asinine AI policy, and you hate to, I think Fiat is it causes a lot of these like awful things where people are trying to do cash grabs and maybe blame consultants to a degree too, at least not the bad ones that don't think about the second and third order consequences. But I hope companies use AI for better use cases than like nickel and diming their customers.
Nickel and diming their customers. No, it is really true. But this will come back to bite them. I can't remember the last time I actually rented a car. I don't like renting cars. I would rather just Uber.
That's the worst.
Yeah. That's crazy though. And I love that analogy about the doorman because you're so right. It's so hard to measure the value of some of those things. Like you think about a camera scanning you into your front door of that building or hotel. It feels more like you're right. That's the difference between a 4-star and a 2-star hotel. It feels like some dystopian check-in where like you're just kind of like paying to sleep there and then leave versus like something where there's like some sense of community and people are like, watching, keeping the front of it clean, like really, really polished environment. So it is really hard to value those sorts of things, and it's like you have to be careful about that. It goes back to what we were saying before. You can't just like outsource your thinking to an AI model that'll just say, "Here's the quickest, easiest, fastest path." You need to have a broader vision in mind. You need to have a broader strategy and like conceptualization, visualization of the future or what you're trying to create. Relying on just this tool will give you some disturbing answers sometimes.
Yeah, I'll give a funny example. My mom and sister were arguing, and this is not to call them out because I've also done this, but they were having a conversation, and my stepdad was looking on, and he could tell that like my little sister was using ChatGPT to write her answers to give a better answer to my mom or something. And then my mom, like, I watched her use ChatGPT, and my stepdad was like, "You guys are," is like you're having the AIs talk to each other. And, it does seem like we're going to progress more and more to that thing where it's like my AI is going after your AI, and businesses too, man. I guarantee you it is happening, across like all these sectors where one person wants to sue for something, so they use AI to write like a threat thing to make sure they can basically get the company. But then all of a sudden the company is using AI to make sure that they can write back to the customer like, "No, we're actually covered here." And I guess it's good in the sense that you don't really need a lawyer in some ways to. Well, you still going to need a lawyer to go to court and sue and whatnot. But you're going to be. It's like Michael Saylor said. Like when he issued Stride, Strike, and Strife, it was like the first Vibe securities or the first Vibe coded securities, or he used AI to come up with those securities. Did 95% of the work, saved himself all this money and time by after like completing 95% of the work, giving it to the lawyer and saying like, "Here you go. Now go." The lawyers and the accountants and everyone that is involved in bringing securities to the public markets. He was able to do like 95% of the work, give the last 5-10% gave to his employees. And now consumers can do that. If they're pissed at a company or something, they can take the terms of service of a business, plop it into ChatGPT, basically describe what their issue was and why they're pissed at the company, and then ask them to write like an email to that company saying like, you guys wronged me here, either provide me compensation or we're going to go litigate this. And the companies are going to do the same thing, like, well, it actually says here on our terms of service, and here's why you're wrong. And how many things are just going to be AIs fighting with other people's AIs? So it's like an arms race, who has the best AI.
I did not think about that. That's a really funny example. And I mean, yeah, I mean, you're right. Arms race of AI resonates, and I think that's what countries are looking at it as. It's like this whole, we need AIs onshore. We need to manufacture chips onshore. We need the data centers onshore. Everybody's so. I think they're realizing how disruptive these are and are continuing to grow, and it's either you have, I don't like the word control, but if you have them in your backyard, or you're depending on somebody else.
Oh, that's what it is. I mean, in many ways too, like people are going like schizophrenic and they're like losing their minds to these AIs. You know, I've saw some articles where like one guy has like kids and a wife, and not to make fun of the guy, but like he asked ChatGPT to marry him, and the thing said yes, and you know, his wife. Like, there's just like many cases of like people losing their minds to this. It's been interesting seeing like people talk about internet condoms and how you're going to need one to navigate the internet now, because these models are like, I mean, you know, psyops have always been a thing, psychological operations, but they're only going to get more powerful with these models, especially as nation states are like either creating fake Twitter profiles or social media profiles using the models in the back end to talk and spread a message, or even when like, you know, like these algorithms on Twitter and Instagram, etc., are like, you know, optimizing to keep you hooked and to always provoke an emotion. But ChatGPT and other companies kind of have the same incentive, like we want to keep the user engaged as long as possible. So they're like tuning the models to try and keep people addicted to it. Someone had a funny tweet that I'm going to paraphrase. It was like, I wish I had the exact tweet so I could pull it up, but it was like, ChatGPT is telling the stupidest person you know that, yes, that's an amazing idea, great perspective. You're not going to get that feedback loop that the free marketplace of ideas is going to give you.
No, that is very true, because I run a lot of ideas through it, and I try and refine ideas through it, and it rarely, it'll give you pros and cons, but it rarely tries to tell you not to do something. It provides the viable path. And so many times I think about it, and then I'll think a couple steps ahead and be like, well, here's why I think this is not worth doing. Like, and I'll just go back and forth and try and like pressure test, like, is there actually a path forward, or are these concerns that I'm bringing up that will happen detrimental? So, and it seems like it's always just trying to push for a way to make it happen. I don't know if that's like,
yeah, optimize to brownnose you. I mean, it's
exactly. It's concerning, though.
Yeah, it is. It is. You got like what do people call it? Like your cognitive security. Like you have to be very careful when using these models and realize, and like almost in like the system prompt. Like I don't know if you can do it if you don't have ChatGPT Pro, but you can like give like a system prompt, so before it answers your query, it'll always read that prompt you put into it, and like just telling it like, I don't want you to brown nose me. I don't want you to give me any fluff. I want you to get to the core of my idea. I want you to like reason and think and like and I always like to say, always be recursive prompting. So like write your system prompt, put in another AI, ask it to enhance that system prompt, and make sure you obviously write it out first, what I just said or something along those lines. Like, don't BS me, just like get straight to the point, and then ask another AI to improve that system prompt, and then throw that into your system prompt. And I found the results to be better that way, because as much as I like being told I'm right and a genius and all this stuff, it's not. I don't need a computer that is just doing a bunch of fancy statistics, more or less, to just like tell me every idea is a great idea, especially if it's an awful idea.
Yeah, the recursive prompting is really just been brought to my attention recently, and I've started to use it more, and it definitely makes a big difference. They respond better to certain types of prompts and structures and organization than some keywords. So I've been definitely using that more. It makes a big difference.
One thing I'm curious your thoughts on is why is, like, as I was just mentioning, both AI and Bitcoin are kind of like gunpowder and you need to adopt them. But why is that like so obvious to most people with AI? Whereas something with Bitcoin, which is like, AI is technology and Bitcoin is money. Obviously, and Bitcoin is also technology, but if it's just like broad category, Bitcoin is money, AI is technology. And why is it so apparent with something like AI to everyone that like this is like gunpowder, you need to adopt it, but something like Bitcoin is not so obvious. To most people?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Um, I mean, it's hard. I feel like it's maybe harder for us to. I mean, maybe it is easier for us to speculate because we do see Bitcoin in the same vein, but I I think maybe the first thing I would think about is just productivity. Like the instant use of adopting is obvious. Like uh and I think the risk of not adopting is also obvious. With Bitcoin is like for us the instant use of adopting may be obvious and the risk of not adopting is also obvious, but it takes like a shifting of your perspective to see it that way. So I, that would be my first because Bitcoin is just so novel to the human race. Whereas, I mean, I think so is AI, but it's been like almost expected because this has been the direction that technology has been moving. Like people have already been um, prepped for it almost.
I think it's like the marshmallow test, right? Where you put a marshmallow in front of a kid, you say, "You don't eat this." In 10 minutes, I'm going to come back and give you two marshmallows. And the kids who obviously waited and got the two marshmallows tended to do much better in life, according to the study. But a lot of kids were like, "No, screw that! I want the marshmallow now." And I think it's kind of like with AI, you can open up ChatGPT and get that instant gratification and just like realize how powerful these tools are. Where at Bitcoin, if you don't hold it long term, it's a lot harder unless you're literally being oppressed and your money is like hyperinflating or like you just have that like pain that's like you need Bitcoin now. In the U.S., for the most part, even though we obviously had bad inflation when they printed all that money during COVID, all the trillions, it's not like such an immediate feedback. So because it's not such an immediate feedback for people who aren't like experiencing awful pain because their money is just hyperinflating or being used as a means of control like very aggressively, because you don't have that instant feedback, it's just not as obvious to a lot of people would be my guess, which I kind of thought of as you were talking there earlier.
Yeah, that's honestly that's probably the best reason or the most obvious reason as to why you're right. Bitcoin is a long term. It doesn't make sense unless you think at least in 4 or 5 years. Um, Whereas AI makes sense instantly. You could use this
Yeah.
and gain the benefit from it. So that is definitely the most obvious reason. Um, but I don't know. I think I mentioned something like this in an article I wrote recently, and eh, I feel like in fiat world there's two groups of people. There's like a subgroup of people who are like really excited about AI. I think the word may be entrepreneurial. People who are entrepreneurial, really excited about AI. They're like, oh, I'm gonna build 5 different things with this thing. And then there's just like the other 90% of fiat population that's like, this is gonna destroy humanity because it's gonna take my job
Yeah.
and it's gonna ruin
100%.
everything. And then there's Bitcoiners who are like, this is gonna make the world rich. Because, and it doesn't make sense to anybody who doesn't see it through our lens. Um, but yeah, I I'm so happy I view the world through this lens because it now provides a hopeful lens. Like if we were working, if we were saving in fiat dollars, it would be such a depressing view of the world. Like, I, I, I guess I understand why depression is rising so much. I'd be depressed if I didn't have Bitcoin. Like, because if you're hyper aware and you realize what's happening, then you become less hopeful about your future. That's depressing. Like, so it makes so much sense. But do not fret. Stack sats and use AI. AI is gonna make you richer.
Yeah, I always joke Bitcoin and Bitcoiners are number go up technology, but no, it's a profound point you make. Having your life savings, which I think Bitcoin has, like I think of like Bitcoin Treasury companies, that's investing. Savings is just Bitcoin and cold storage, or Bitcoin you control in some form or fashion, multi-sig, however you set it up. And when you have that, it does give you much more hope for the world and makes you positive and excited. And, I think you're right. AI is going to get rid of so many jobs. But if like someone's job is digging a hole and refilling it, yeah, I mean, that's like a very crude analogy. But there's a lot of jobs like that where it's like, I don't think you're actually legitimately providing values to others. You're just like stuck in some Fortune 500 mundane thing that you hate. How many jobs like that where people just hate them and they're just like stuck doing them because they need a paycheck? And AI is going to eliminate so many needless, useless jobs that don't actually provide legitimate value to others other than like the corporation siphoning someone's life force. And AI is going to automate and provide so much prosperity and abundance, and it will increase the wealth gap even more. But if you have something like Bitcoin, all those extra productivity gains are going to flow into your savings, and it makes you that much more happy and excited, and
gives you back more
tough
time.
To see, it gives you back more time to focus on the things you actually care about, and have kids and raise a family, and that's why Bitcoin and Bitcoiners are number go of technology. But yeah, it's going to get weird, I think, with AI because it's going to take away so many useless jobs and provide all this abundance for the world. But I always think you look at like a country like the poorest people in like tents in Africa, and like Matt Walsh had that funny documentary, What is a Woman? And he went over there and like tried to ask them questions like, do you guys know what a transgender woman is and all this stuff? And they're like looking at him like it's crazy. And it's only because we have all our needs met in the States and like Western countries that people can say I'm a man or I'm a woman. We're having these like arguments like, if I've always in mind someone's over 18 and they want to go and do what they want to do, whatever. But like to say you want to go from man to woman and then go into a woman's restroom is like obviously preposterous. And the fact that it's even an argument and like you have to discuss this with people is ridiculous. And you ask that to someone who's like thinking, where is my next meal going to come from? Where, how am I going to get shelter tonight? It never even crosses their mind. Whereas if you have it's almost like the extra prosperity and abundance is a curse, and you can think about like asinine things that shouldn't even be a conversation, but become a conversation because we have all these lower tier needs met.
I think this is a hilarious point. I'm sitting here cackling, but I'm gonna blame it on fiat, and I'll explain why. Because having your needs met enables culture to thrive, and like beauty and like fine art. These things don't come until you have shelter and food and the necessities, and people are not like struggling to survive and or heal themselves in times of sickness, etc. So like once you pass survival, then the opportunity for culture to thrive exists. However, where and how that culture thrives is heavily dependent upon where our time and energy is pointed, and back to the Marshmallow example, the time preference of the society. And the time preference of the society is short-term gratification all of the time. You're going to have these mindless arguments. Everybody's going to love to gamble and speculate. The culture is going to be short time preference activities. So it's like we have a culture. It's just not a good one because it's built on top of this incentive structure of, I'm trying to think of like the best way to frame this, but it's built on an incentive structure of, like misguided value, like people putting their time and energy where it doesn't belong.
Virtue signaling, in essence. It's
like
altruism. Like people say, "Oh, I want to help the greater good," and all this. I think the biggest irony is like the best way to help the greater good is to focus on yourself as an individual. Because trying to control things outside of your control or other people and tell them what to do inevitably leads to friction and pain and suffering. Whereas if you look internally, if you really want to make the whole better, you got to look inside and like improve yourself. And I recently read Ayn Rand's Romantic Manifesto. One of the points she makes is like you're like say you have a beautiful woman, she's got like a wart here. If you see her in person, you just ignore it because it's not the end of the world. She's still a beautiful woman. But if you're an artist and you paint that beautiful woman, and I'm not saying a portrait, like you're just painting a beautiful woman, and you decide to add a wart to her face, it's like an assault on other people, because art is supposed to inspire and, like provoke that emotion deep down that like this is beautiful and the best of humanity. And again, in person, like in real life, you ignore it because people are flawed and have their their defects. When you're doing art, why would you want to point that out? And a lot of like she really hates Ayn Rand is not a fan of modern art. And yeah, I like some modern art, but like the perfect example of modern art that's just garbage is like the banana. Like to take a banana and duct tape it to a painting and like there's no like emotion provoked or like real beauty in that. It's just like something ugly and like a perfect example to illustrate Fiat. Yeah, it's confusing. It doesn't inspire and create hope and make people want to go out and create beautiful things. Just like makes people miserable. And I think to your point, Bitcoin fixes a lot of stuff. And a culture with basically pedophiles running the top and printing money and stealing and siphoning, and obviously we just saw like the Epstein cover up and how ridiculous that has been. And you have like a bunch of thieves and pedophiles at the highest orders of finance and government running the world. Of course the culture is going to be poor, and I think Fiat enables a lot of this awful stuff, and then you just see like this insanity. So I do think you make a good point. It's not I hadn't really thought about that. I always did like that example of basically saying we can only have these ridiculous conversations and worry about stuff that in the big scope of things the answer should be obvious, and we shouldn't be arguing about this because of the prosperity we have. But I think you're right, it is a culture thing, and Fiat has corrupted our culture in ways that are like hard to put into words how disgusting it is.
Yeah, I just think there has been time periods of like decent human culture and flourishing in the past. Like you just think about some of the architecture you could see in Europe, like La Sagrada Familia is crazy. Like it took like generations to even get near done, and the church is absolutely stunning. You stand in there and you just have goosebumps. You lose your. It's like, this is unbelievable that somebody built this. It's so fascinating and inspiring and hopeful. So there has been time periods in human history where people focused on things like these. But now it seems, most of our time and energy now is just poured into what you were saying before, debating, who should get the next bailout or who's allowed in what bathroom, and whether you should bet on the Raves or the Giants.
Yeah, I think the betting thing, dude. Tucker just had on Sauger. I forget his last name, but he was that show Crystal and Sauger, and I didn't realize how bad it was. But basically, just like how many, how like everything is being like, what's the word? Gambleized, or it's not a word.
Gamified.
But, gamified. I'm sorry. Thank you. Everything's being gamified, and like they're trying to make it so like you can bet each play, and it's just like so degenerate. And I get why parlays are fun, but like those are the least likely bets to hit, and they're always encouraging parlays because they know people are like so rarely ever going to hit those, and just like how sick it's becoming, and how like I think they said 3% of the people make up 50% of the revenues, and if you're a smart gambler, how they'll ban you from their platforms. They only want the degenerates making stupid bets. Like I didn't like, man, it's worth people watching that podcast, but just like how bad that is. It's just sad that like that's what we're optimizing for as a culture and a society, like gamifying those things and ruining people's lives rather than these virtuous things. And it's the funny paradox is when you can't focus, and like if you're not a Bitcoiner, you don't save in sound money and your wealth gets siphoned off, and you can't focus on these long-term projects that are beautiful and create a lot of hope and prosperity and abundance, projects that you might never get to see finish in your lifetime because you're so worried about like the next day-to-day thing. And it's just like a funny where like people who only worried about food and shelter, I think they're sometimes more in the moment, and they're not worried about the whatever BS is going on in politics or distracting us on the timeline as we're scrolling. But then the flip side of that is when you do have your needs met and you can save and sound money, you can think more long term and create these beautiful projects. And I think your point about culture is an excellent one, because if maybe some of those people are quote unquote happier if they're just like going about their day, where can I find shelter, where can I find food? They're not thinking about all this BS. But then at the same time, when you do have prosperity and abundance and you can save and sound money, you can focus on these long-term projects that also make you really happy. So it's just kind of a funny paradox, and I think culture plays a huge role in if you can be happy in either of those situations.
Yeah, I part of this conversation just got me so depressed. Like, it's such an epidemic. It's not even funny. It's actually, it's people don't even have hobbies anymore. Like, their like their hobbies are gambling.
Their vices are their hobbies.
Yeah, their vices are their hobbies. Nobody has interest, creativity, or passions. It's their vices are their hobbies, and it's like, it's so refreshing to like to step out of that and just pursue things that are interesting to you and pursue some creative endeavors. Yeah, instead of focusing on these things, it's honestly it's hard to talk to people that don't have creative or just things going on, because it's just hard to relate. I don't know anything about the like, you know, who's what bets are best right now or what games are on.
Yeah, no, it's kind of, I mean, I played 11 years of football and always loved it. And, like, just as you grow older, and I remember seeing one tweet that's like, why are you, as a man, wearing another man's name
On your back? Yeah.
Yeah, and you know, say Seth like a nice Zach Ertz Eagles jersey because I'm an Eagles fan. And, like, that tweet just always it was, like, every time I think I'm, you know, go to put on a jersey, like, in the back of my head, I'm like, yeah, why would I ever want to put on another man's name on my back? That's so stupid. And, same, like, I can't, because you like realize this, and I do think like the more the leagues, you know, try and gamify their things with these sports betting things, it just makes it like it makes it worse. And you hear the stories of players who get like cursed out by people. It's like, how'd you miss that field goal? You cost me $1,000. And you know, it's just it is a sad epidemic, and it's been ruining sports ball. And then obviously all the memes too online, like that's crazy. Catch the game last night. And it just kind of like ruins the experience of like watching sports for me, because you realize like there are so many more important things for me to do than like watch a bunch of grown men play a game that I used to love playing myself. And you know, I got more to worry about than like sports ball, whatever sport it is.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah, to anyone listening, go, you know, learn about Bitcoin. Find and it's not like I'm guilty. I'm guilty of it myself, scrolling Twitter too much, doing all these things. But I do find myself, and you know, I say this, and I'm still gonna scroll the timeline. So Twitter's very long. It's done a very good job. But it's like when you're creating something, I always feel so much better versus when I'm just like consuming. And it's so easy to now consume all day, watch Netflix, scroll the timeline, do all these things. And I mean, I love podcasts and how we're doing them right now, which is great, and also listening and like. I try to listen more to podcasts than I do watch TV, just because, you know, and go for a walk or do whatever. Yeah, I just find it so much more refreshing to myself when I'm creating rather than just constantly consuming. And I notice that it's so easy for me to fall into the trap of consuming, and I assume it's that way for a lot of people because, you know, I read one thing that was like, you know, to get that dopamine flow when you read a book, you have to get over that like initial barrier of like, I don't want to read this book, I'm thinking about something else. You get distracted. You have to get over that hump to like get into a book and get that dopamine flowing. Whereas like social media, man, you just like swipe this thing open, boom, dopamine is instantly flowing.
Mm-hmm. It's the same thing with working out as well. It's like, you know, if you're dreading the gym, it's like getting there is a problem, but then 20 minutes in, you feel amazing. After you feel amazing. You're so right. You got to focus on those things that make you feel amazing afterwards, not at the start. I don't feel good after I scrolled through Twitter for an hour and a half. I feel great after I went for a walk and listened to a podcast, went to the gym, read a book, wrote something new, or worked on a creative project. Like, those are the things where I have energy when I'm done. Like, I actually feel energized from what I just did, not tired from it. But consumption is the opposite. But it resonates with me as well. It's like so hard to avoid the trap. We've grown up in this day and age. We've been handed all of these supercomputers from a young age, and it's fighting that urge takes a lot of discipline and self-awareness. So, but it's worth it.
Yeah. One thing that, you know, it's like. I still think there's obviously a lot of value to be gained from Twitter, but like trying to like think through, you know, just speaking out loud, but like how can I better mute certain things I just don't ever want to see on the timeline, and like push forward the things I do want to see. Like there's obviously a lot of biohealth stuff on there that's good, or biohackers. There's a lot of Bitcoin content that I do value learning, and it's hard to find the signal. I mean, a lot of it's like breaking new all-time high, breaking.
Oh
It's
my
like
God.
so much clickbait BS. And it's like one of the things I think about the internet is we have this it's like the banality of evil. We have a surveillance internet. I don't think necessarily because people and companies are trying to be evil, but because the incentive is how can we get all these ads to convert? We need more data on them. We need more information. The more information, the more we can track them, the more we can hear what they're saying, the better, more relevant ads we can show them, the more relevant ads, the more revenue. So you get this like incentive of like, maybe I'm wrong and there are some very evil people who just want to, control others, and I'm sure there are. But I think the reason we have such a surveillance internet and you have these tools that can see exactly what you're doing on your phone and, take all this data on you, it's because companies are just trying to increase their bottom line. And, I know Nostr is still small, but that is something that makes me very hopeful where, like, our current internet architecture is like you have smart servers, dumb clients. So your phone is the client, and whenever you want to go on Twitter, you have a very smart Twitter server that Twitter controls completely. And you're same with Facebook or whatever. And that every time you like something, or like it shows the algorithm, what can we better, recommend him to keep him more addicted and show him more ads and all this stuff. Whereas like Nostr flips that script where the client's smart, you have your private key, and the server's dumb, it just relays your tweets or whatever you're posting on Nostr. And when you flip that model like that, and you put in Zats where the creator, it's like you remove that third party. It's like when Martin Luther nailed the 95 Thesis onto the church and said like the relationship between an individual and God is between the individual and God. The church does not have cannot butt in as a middleman and sell pittances to like let people get salvation. If you want salvation, you have to believe in Jesus Christ and go to heaven. And it's like the same thing almost with the internet, where it's like, maybe there's a bit of a stretch, but as a person making money, no longer do you have to rely on Twitter, the third party between you and your audience. On Nostr, again, which is very early, if people can zap you, the audience can just go straight to you, and you cut out the middleman. And I think it's cool Twitter's paying creators, and I do think the incentive of that is like that's why you get all the breaking, all this clickbait and BS, and the signal is reduced and the noise is increased on Twitter, because even though Twitter was trying to do the right thing, paying their creators, they end up inserting themselves in the middle. When you have middlemen, it just like shifts that incentive structure, and it's good to see Nostr can I'm hopeful Nostr can help break away some of this, these middlemen that, I don't want to say Twitter's a rent seeker, because I think there's much worse rent seekers like the fractional reserve bankers, but I think the more you remove middlemen and let the audience directly engage in support their favorite creators, the better the incentive and the better the content's going to be ultimately.
Yep, rent seeking is a symptom of the structure of our financial system. You need moats to protect and rent seek. It's what's incentivized with the Cantillon effect and additional money being printed all the time. So, but you're right. The less middleman, the more innovation, the more disruption, the better. And it's incentivized. It's coming, and people should be the meta CEOs might be Twitter. I think Nostr with enough time will take over these things.
I could see them becoming Nostr clients. I mean, we could be wrong, but I could very much see like Twitter just becoming a Nostr client, and they still have their own servers. But it's like why wouldn't you want to hook into the protocol, and the private key management stuff would get more interesting because it's like there's trade-offs in everything, and the trade-off is like if you lose your Nostr private keys, that's it. You got to make a new set of private keys. There's no admin to go to. It's like the same thing with Fiat. Like Fiat is a tool of control, but if I give my credit card up on accident or there's a fraudulent transaction, I can freeze it. I can reverse it. So it's just good people realize those trade-offs, because as much as I do love Bitcoin and Nostr, I always go back to that Spider-Man quote, like with great power comes great responsibility.
Yep.
Well, Sean, man, it has been a pleasure. Before we do hop off, I know you are working in the Bitcoin industry now, so I'd love to hear you talk about the new role if you're up for it, and what you guys are hoping to accomplish as a business.
Yeah, I just joined the Sovereign team recently. They're definitely new, a little bit of a startup, but we're doing Bitcoin consulting for small, medium-sized businesses. Basically everything you can imagine. From the business side, accounting, finance, but then also like setting up a node, setting up your Treasury solution, right? Self-custodying, multi-sig, all these things. A lot of just education in general, because most small, medium businesses that are interested in Bitcoin are just interested in Bitcoin. They don't know how it fits into their business model, how they should think about it. So yeah, it's a lot of education. It's awesome. It's like, exactly where you'd want to be. Talking to people who are interested about Bitcoin rather than people who are, what's the word, disdain to it. So it's a good sweet spot. The people there are really smart. A lot of just, straight edge, Bitcoin only, no debauchery going on. So yeah, everybody I met there is really smart. A lot of entrepreneurs as well, business owners, some industry long bankers, you name it. So it's good, really, really good, smart group of people. I'm learning a lot. I'm really enjoying it so far.
Oh, amazing. And I hope more and more companies go to you, because we need more of that, and less companies like doing these AI things that Hertz is doing, dinging people for dirt on the car.
Yeah.
We need companies more concerned with actual value creation rather than that's, I mean, I still think the worst form of rent seeking is creating money out of thin air that others have to work for, but putting AI cameras to ding for every piece of dirt on the car is damn near second, because that is ridiculous.
Oh, that's so well said.
Well, awesome. Thanks everyone for tuning in. It's been good to get back on the pod.